The Show Must Go On, MLTS Part 3. Azure Skull, Chapter 5. Summary. The sun began to fall from the sky. Notes. This is IT. Y'all are in for a wild ride now. This story features a lot of heavy topics. Take a break if you need it. Stay safe. HeartFindOutline.com. Refer to and notes for Chapter 5 trigger warnings. Spoilers will apply. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. Leo bided his time. It wasn't like he was on a deadline, though he would be dead by the end of the line, so he waited patiently. While he waited, Raph confiscated Leo's case of beer as well as his katanas. It's just a precaution, Raph had said. I'm just looking out for what's best for you. But Leo didn't mind. Even as the urges grew stronger, he pushed them down. It would all be over soon. Maybe it was better this way too. As long as Leo kept on a smile and acted like everything was going great, then no one would suspect a thing. Especially given that Donnie, well, Leo didn't want to think about it. At this point, Raph and Donnie both knew about Leo's addictions and mental state. Mikey still had yet to know anything and, honestly, Leo didn't have the heart to tell him. It wasn't like it mattered anymore. And everyone knew about Donnie's secret, though Leo kept on trying to forget. And everyone knew that Leo knew about the secret that everyone kept from him. Leo didn't want to waste another thought on it. It didn't change anything, if at all. It was just the final straw. A couple days have passed. Raph and Donnie went out too. That place to clean up Donnie's mess. Leo refused to go. The others didn't push him. Mikey also insisted on staying behind, not wanting to leave Leo alone. This was the perfect opportunity to spend the day with Mikey, leaving behind one last happy memory with him. The younger brothers were in the TV room. Leo was playing a video game, sitting in Dad's chair, while Mikey was drawing with markers on the floor. Every now and then, Mikey would get frustrated. His arm would flinch here and there. Then Mikey would give up, crumbling the drawings into paper balls and chucking them across the room, getting more exceedingly angry with each mistake. At one point, a paper ball smacked Leo in the face. Ow, Leo said instinctively, though it didn't hurt. Oh, sorry, Leo. Mikey apologized quickly with worry. Leo laughed. It's all right, hermano. Leo put down the controller and began to unravel the drawing. It was graffiti art, wild concept designs. It was so abstract that Leo couldn't figure out why Mikey didn't like it. Hey, this looks great, Leo beamed. Thanks, but it's not perfect, Mikey grumbled, already starting a new drawing. It's graffiti. I may not know much about art, but I know it's not supposed to be perfect, Leo replied. He got off the chair and crouched down next to Mikey, looking over at all the designs. Ever thought about throwing one of these up? Mikey sighed and paused for a moment. Yeah, but there's not much space in the layer. Who said anything about the layer? Why not throw them on the streets? Leo asked. Huh, Mikey mocked. As if Dad would let me. I'm still grounded after the last time I went out on my own. Leo paused, thinking of a solution. Then he got an idea. Period. Well, would it count if I came with you to supervise? Mikey whipped his head around at Leo, his eyes brightening. Really? You would? Yeah, why not? You need to get out of here more, Leo shrugged. But are you sure that it's okay? That I won't get in trouble? Sure, I'm sure. I'm the surest in the world, Leo ensured. Mikey jumped to his feet with a shining grin. Oh, baby, what are we waiting for? Let's go. The two of them got up and snuck out of the sewers, putting on their jackets as disguises, which included Mikey wearing his handkerchief scarf. Mikey was carrying a backpack full of spray paint cans, while Leo held onto his little brother's stereo. It was a cold and cloudy day, though there was no wind, rain, or snow. The brothers stuck to the shadows of the alleyways to avoid being seen. Mikey got excited and ran up ahead. Come on, I've been eyeing this one spot for a while, Mikey called out. Leo smiled and picked up speed, chasing after him. They reached an alleyway in between a bunch of apartment complexes. It was like a maze of brick walls. Mikey eagerly zigzagged through them, while Leo tried to keep up and not lose sight of him. Eventually, Mikey stopped abruptly, staring up at a large concrete wall. Other graffiti tags surrounded it like framing the perfect canvas. Mikey giggled and threw the backpack off of him. He reached in the bag, grabbing a previously crumbled drawing. His eyes glanced over it for a few seconds, analyzing. Then he closed his eyes, putting on a determined grin. Mikey tucked the paper in the pocket of his jacket, reaching for the first spray can and shaking it before popping the cap. He turned around to look at Leo. Turn on the music, brother. Let's get the groove going, Mikey exclaimed coolly. Leo nodded, sitting down on the ground behind him, and turned on the stereo. There was already a tape inside, playing some breakbeat and hip-hop rap. Leo turned up the volume as he watched Mikey go to work. It was like a switch went off in Mikey's brain. When he was in the zone, boy, was he stuck in it. He jumped and stretched, staying light on his feet, shaking a can in one hand before tossing the other off to the side and switching colors. Some lines were frayed, some were clean cut, others dripped down the wall. Leo noticed that whenever Mikey's arms flinched and made a mistake, the orange turtle did his best to shrug it off and work out a way around it, and ended up making something completely different than what his concept drawing intended. Mikey was a creative thinker like that. No matter what obstacle came his way, he could always overcome it. He was always stubborn to see things through to the end. Amazing, Leo muttered. What was that? Mikey called out over the music. He was climbing up the building's emergency stair exit, craning up high to reach the top of the wall. I said it looks amazing, Leo shouted back. Ha ha, you know it, Mikey taunted. After a few moments, Mikey jumped down and brushed off his jacket. He looked back at the wall, slowly walking backwards until he sat down next to Leo. Leo turned down the music as the two of them stared at the masterpiece. Mikey leaned his head on Leo's shoulder, adjusting his scarf. So, Mikey panted, catching his breath. What I think? Leo glanced his eyes all over the wall. Yeah, it sure is something, to be honest. Leo had no idea what he was looking at. It was just a bunch of shapes and colors, like an explosion of creativity. Still looked cool nonetheless. Mikey shrugged. Not my best work, but I wouldn't say it's the worst either. You got talent, Michelangelo. Genuine talent, Leo said. You're incredibly smart when it comes to problem solving, and you can achieve things like no one else can. You're an artist. Then Leo rubbed his fist on top of Mikey's head. That, and a badass mystic warrior, he teased. Mikey chuckled, pushing Leo's hand off. I'm only like that because of you, Mikey explained cheerfully. And Raph and Donnie, Dad, April, Draxum, Casey, Todd, he droned. As long as I have you with me, I can do anything. Leo's heart sank at that statement. He looked down at Mikey's arms, at the nerves glistening shyly. You would have been better off if you didn't save me. If I wasn't here, you would be able to go far. I'm just holding you back and making everything worse. But Leo couldn't say that. He had to play along. Sure, Leo said. The two continued to stare at the graffiti for a while longer. Then Leo shook his head, putting back on a smiling facade. He got up, grabbing the stereo, and reaching out a hand to Mikey. So, what's next? A couple more days later into the week, Raph pulled Leo off to the side. He took Leo to the training room for a one-on-one training session. I need to show you how to be a good leader, Raph stated. They've had this conversation many times before, but Raph insisted on giving Leo a refresher, perhaps to lecture Leo on his irrational behavior. But Leo wasn't gonna let Raph red him anymore. There was no point to it. Let's start with the basics. Raph started as he approached the punching bag. He began throwing some light punches at the punching bag. This was a usual thing for Raph. It helped him think while he talked. What are the 4 keys to being a leader? Leo sighed, pondering. He sat down on the rubber gym flooring, watching Raph as he thought. Then Leo shrugged. I dunno. Come on, you know this. Give it a try. Raph pressed on before sending the punching bag a swift kick. Join me over here. Maybe it'll help get those leadership gears turning. Leo obliged, getting up and walking over to Raph. He stepped to the side of the punching bag as the two of them began to beat it up together. Leo tried his best to think about what the answer was, but still nothing came to him. He knew bits and pieces of information, but nothing was clicking. Leo scoffed. I give up. What is it? Raph rolled his eyes. Then he took a step back, catching his breath. Trust, compassion, stability, and hope, he answered. Then he went back to punching. Once Raph had said that, finally things began to fall into place. Leo nodded, feeling stupid for not having it click sooner. Leo softened his punches, noticing how it was stinging his arms. So with that, what does trust mean? Raph tested. Trust, Leo started, thinking for a second. Trust is being open with the team, right? Yeah, more or less. Raph nodded, tilting his head side to side. But it's also about keeping your promises. So this was a lecture. You boy, you ain't gonna let that go, huh? Leo mumbled. Nope, not in a million years, Raph confirmed. There was a bit of awkward silence for a moment as the A-team continued to punch the punching bag. Then Raph cleared his throat. What about compassion? What's that mean? He asked. Leo chewed his lip. Staying positive and lending a listening ear. Timpana, I guess. Exactly. See, you're getting it now, Raph smiled. Leo took a mental photo of that smile. He wanted to remember it for as long as he could. Next up, stability. What is it? Leo snorted a chuckle, barely hitting the punching bag now. Ain't nobody got that, Raph scoffed. Just answer the question, Leon. Okay, Leo laughed. It's like making sure that people can count on you, Raph nodded, swinging a mighty punch at the punching bag. And you do that through good communication. keeping your team grounded. Raph landed a few more quick hits at the punching bag before taking a step back. He panted, wiping the sweat off his forehead. Leo stopped as well, resisting the urge to rub his arms that still stung. Raph looked directly at Leo with a grin. Last one, Hope. Hit it. When Leo came across the answer, he felt a wave of guilt wash over him. But he couldn't let it slip. He couldn't drop the facade. So he forced a smile. And he answered, leaving a bright future. Even though there wasn't going to be one for Leo. Raph chuckled, walking over and patting Leo on the head. Leo tried to keep himself in the moment, to savor this last happy memory with his oldest brother. But the thoughts about what was going to happen began to weigh Leo down. Then Leo shook his head, putting back on a smiling facade. So, what's next? Even more days have passed, now rolling into 2 weeks since the start of Leo's plan. Donnie was up next, yet no matter what Leo tried, Donnie didn't seem interested in hanging out. Usually, if Leo wanted to hang out with Donnie, he would pester his figurative twin in the lab. But ever since that dreadful night, Leo felt very uncomfortable entering the lab. Sure, it wasn't the same lab, but Leo just couldn't shake off the paranoid thought of wandering in there, and possibly seeing. Leo violently shook his head, trying to get rid of the nasty image. All of these secrets were driving Leo crazy. And driving. Now there was an idea. Donnie loved driving the turtle tank around, even when they weren't going on missions. Driving the tank was vastly different from a regular car, given all of Donnie's fancy specs. Leo could see Donnie become his true self with his tech. Surely, this was the best way to get that last moment with Donnie he wanted. So Leo, reluctantly, walked over to Donnie's lab. The sun didn't dare to peer inside, calling out for the moon. Hey Donnie, are you in there? Yeah, what is it? Donnie called back. Can you come over here for a sec? Leo asked. There was a pause for a moment. Then Leo heard the sounds of a rolling chair being pushed across the room, before it was replaced by the sound of footsteps. Donnie stepped out of the lab, crossing his arms. What do you need, Nardo? Donnie asked, unamused as he was interrupted from his work. Oh, well, Leo started, rubbing his neck. I was wondering if you wanted to come take a drive, he asked slowly. Okay. Why? Donnie questioned as he raised a marker eyebrow. It's nothing too crazy, it's just that you've been in the lab for too long lately, and, well, I've always known how driving clears your head, so. Donnie held up a fist to his chin, thinking. Then he nodded. All right then, just give me a few minutes to finish up here. You're welcome to come in and wait. Oh, that's fine. I'll just wait out in the garage. Leo smiled weakly. Donnie didn't bother to look at him. He just shrugged and walked off, back into the lab. A few minutes later, Donnie met up with Leo in the garage. As they climbed into the turtle tank, Donnie tapped a few buttons on his Mystic wrist tech. I'll admit, it's always great to get a chance to drive the tank. I mean, I've been doing this since we were 14, Donnie stated. Technically it's illegal to drive at 14, Leo said. Seeing as no one still has a license besides Dad's expired one, everything we do is illegal. Leo chuckled as he sat down in his seat on the right, Donnie taking the driver's seat on the left. The turtle tank gradually turned on as the brothers put on their seat belts. Then they drove out of the garage, up to the topside, as Leo played their playlist through the tank stereo. The sky was clear and blue, yet nearing dusk eventually. Leo turned to Donnie. So, what's the update on Shelly? Making any more progress? Leo asked. Oh yeah, Sheldon's doing great, Donnie beamed. He should actually be back in business soon. And to be honest, I kinda like his new yellow and green eye colors. Sure, it's not my signature palette, but it complements the purple hue design. It also gives him that charming heterochromia effect. I've also added more specs to his full body form, that should be a lot stronger than ever before. I was thinking about making him a huge robotic AI tech suit, but, for now, I just want him back to normal. Leo smiled. Usually, he would tune out Donnie's rants, but this time, he wanted to listen to every word. He needed to remember things this way. Leo nodded. That's great. And I bet since your side project is over, you'll finish repairing him in no time. Donnie clicked his tongue, rolling his eyes. Don't call it a side project. Well, it was completely ridiculous and unnecessary, and served no meaningful purpose. That's practically what a side project is, Leo interrupted. I'm just glad it's over now. It'll all be over soon anyways. There was a bit of awkward silence for a moment beside the music that was playing. Leo tried to redirect the mood by humming along before Donnie made a turn and revealed in front of them a closed dead-end road. Donnie hit the brakes as the tank stuttered to a stop. The street was crumbled in debris, and the street lights, pavement, and buildings that surrounded the road were broken beyond repair. There were no civilians nearby either, just a barren wasteland. Golly, that doesn't look good, Leo mumbled. Looks like there's still places in New York that have yet to be fixed from the whole Krong invasion, Donnie stated. Leo nodded, then a silly thought came to mind. He chuckled. Guess you could say they were really Krong Kai, huh? Donnie snickered, covering his smile behind his hand. Leo blinked in surprise. Donnie never laughed at Leo's jokes before, especially a joke like this. Leo put on a smug smile. Really? That's all it takes for me to get you to laugh? Leo teased. No, Donnie laughed. Then he cleared his throat, crossing his arms. That was a terrible joke. I'd never laugh at something so immature. I just let my guard down for a second is all. I'm still counting that as a win. Don't you dare tell the others I laughed at that. Donnie jabbed Leo with a finger. My magnificent genius brother dignity cannot be tarnished. Leo cackled, pushing away Donnie's hand. The older twin then backed the turtle tank out of the abandoned street and onto a different road. This was perfect. The disaster twins were getting to hang out together for probably the last time. Leo was determined to make Donnie smile and laugh even more. He had to make this moment a happy memory for his brother. Hey Donnie, knock knock, Leo started. Scoff, Donnie enunciated. As if I would fall for another one of your schemes. Leo's grin widened. Knock, knock? Donnie shook his head. Nope, not gonna hear it. Leo didn't give up. He leaned towards Donnie, stretching as far as his seat belt would let him. Then Leo whispered into Donnie's tympana behind his goggles. Knock knock, okay fine. Donnie lurched away, rubbing his tympana against his shoulder. He sighed. Who's there? Leon, Leo answered condescendingly. Leon who? Leo sang. Leon me, when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. Donnie interrupted him with a long exasperated groan, rolling his eyes up as far back as they could go. Woo, terrible pun, humbug, upon you sir, humbug, I say. Leo bursted out in hysterical laughter, trying his best not to let the joyful tears smudge his eyeliner. Then his laughter droned, Leo collecting his composure. Oh, I bet you wish you left me in the prison dimension now, huh? Ha ha. Donnie's shoulders tensed. Then he snapped his head over to look at Leo. The moon gave the sun this horrified look. Leo's smile dropped, realizing what he had said. He didn't even think about it. It just rolled off his tongue. Fuck, I ruined everything again, didn't I? What the fuck was that, you melonhead? Donnie exclaimed, brows furrowed. Leo glanced at the road in front of them, seeing that Donnie was about to run someone over. Whoa, watch the road, Pop-Tart shell, he shouted. Donnie immediately turned back to the horizon, hitting the brakes while jerking the tank to a hard right. The turtle tank swerved out the way just in time. Donnie then quickly straightened the tank steering before soon pulling into an alleyway and slammed the brakes to a stop. Both of the turtles shared a relieved sigh. Leo chewed his cheek, sucking the air through his teeth. I'm sorry, Don. I didn't think that, Leo sputtered. Think what? That it was just okay to joke about that crazy sacrifice you did, Donnie yelled. Yeah, SE cute. Yeah, SE cute, Leo exclaimed, putting his hands up in front of him. I'm sorry, okay? Once again, awkward silence fell upon them. Leo frowned, feeling defeated. He needed to fix this. Now, Leo turned back to the music, turning up the volume, and flashing on a smile. No, Leo, stop, Donnie said as he grabbed Leo's wrist. What? But I need to. Then the soft-shell turtle turned off the music entirely. Donnie sighed, crossing his arms. Leo, what's it gonna take for you to quit being so reckless with your life? Leo reflexively scrunched his face in irritation, gritting his teeth. He did not want to be having this conversation. He put on a curt, mocking grin. Welcome to the Depresso Cafe, where we are currently all out of fucks to give. But if you like, I can make you a complimentary knuckle sandwich, Leo chided. Donnie shook his head in pure disbelief. Unbelievable, he muttered. Absolutely unbelievable. Donnie looked back at the empty alleyway, thinking. Leo leaned forward in his seat, putting an elbow on his leg, and resting his chin on a closed hand. He looked away from Donnie, staring at the floor. I'm such an idiot. Why did I say that? I fucked up yet again. Classic Leo. Then he heard Donnie sniffling. Leo quickly looked back at Donnie to see him crying. For once, Donnie's makeup was the one smudged up from tears. It was rare to see Donnie cry. Well, Don, hey, it's okay, Leo soothed. Do you remember that promise we made when we were kids? Donnie's voice croaked. Leo thought for a second, but nothing came to mind. He hesitantly shook his head. We were 8. I had a nightmare. I think it was about you disappearing or running away in a forest. And I lost you in the fog? Donnie quivered. He took a breath, wiping one of the many tears with one hand. I woke up and ran into your room. You were awake, reading comic books. And I asked you to make me a promise. Don't you remember, Leo? Leo tried to think really hard, but he couldn't remember anything from back then. Perhaps it wasn't as important to him as it was to Donnie. But still, Leo felt really bad about his memory failing him. He shook his head again. You promised that you would never leave me, Donnie cried. That no matter what obstacle we faced, you would always be there by my side. Partners in crime. Hand in hand. Sun and moon. Why don't you remember that? Then Donnie blinked, realizing something. And so that's why you did it, he muttered. Period. You forgot our promise, and ended up leaving me behind in a separate dimension. Leo lurched forward towards him. No, Donnie, that's not it at all. The seatbelt stopped him from getting up. Leo became irritated with it, fitfully taking it off before getting up and running over to his disaster twin. Donnie, the sun hushed as he hugged the moon. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, D. I never meant. I wouldn't have done that if I'd known. Fuck, Donnie. I'm so fucking sorry. Donnie heaved, crying harder as he hugged back. Promise me you'll never leave me again. I can't lose you, Leo. I promise. Leo lied. I promise I won't ever leave your side. Ever. Leo put as much sincerity as he could into those words, knowing full well that he was lying to Donnie as well as himself. But he needed Donnie to remember him like this. He couldn't falter from the plan. Leo couldn't be a coward anymore. You know I love you, brother. Right? Leo mumbled. Donnie pushed back from the hug, wiping his tears. Right? He sniffled. Yeah, you're right. He turned back to the steering wheel, collecting himself. Let's get out of there. That's enough emotion for me today. Leo smiled warmly and nodded, heading back to his seat. Donnie started the turtle tank back on as Leo buckled in his seatbelt. As Donnie backed out of the alleyway, Leo hesitantly turned on the music again, raising the volume and listening to the radio gaga. He looked over at Donnie and smiled brighter, changing the subject. So, what's next? Another week has passed? Leo's plan was taking too long. But Leo couldn't be impatient. He had to wait it out. He couldn't leave anything to chance. But with each passing day, his clean streak from cuts and alcohol was eating at him. Yet, Leo had to endure. He couldn't risk it. April and Casey came by to visit today. Leo couldn't pass up the opportunity to discreetly say goodbye to them too. He sat down on the floor with them in the TV room, along with Splinter, who was already as fast asleep in his chair. Casey was rambling on about April's achievements in the future. You had this yellow jumpsuit, and these goggles like Donnie's. And that mystic bat of yours was incredible. It could take down anything. While everyone insisted you used a more practical weapon, like a plasma gun, you stuck to your bat. Casey smiled. Then he paused, his expression softened. I don't know where you went the last time I saw you, but that doesn't matter now. Ha! I bet I was still kicking ass. As always, April laughed. I second that, Leo chimed in. What about me? You kept saying I was the greatest ninja that the world has ever seen. What did I do to deserve that title? Casey's face beamed. Oh, where do I start? He exclaimed. You were an amazing leader. You made sure that all of us were able to work together, and all of your plans were executed flawlessly. Flawlessly. Leo? Yeah, right, April teased. I'm not kidding. Everything I know came from Master Leonardo. My skills, my knowledge, my training, all of it. You make an outstanding sensei, Casey asserted. Leo thought for a moment. My plans, being flawless, it put Leo at ease, knowing that his plan could quite possibly be working perfectly. No one can know, you know, it scared me. When you sacrificed yourself, Casey started, rubbing his neck. You did the same thing in the future. And I was worried that the timeline was repeating itself. I've heard theories about the space-time continuum being consistent, but I never thought that your stunt would be one of them. Casey then turned to Leo and smiled. I'm just glad it's not, you know, yeah. Me too, Leo lied. The room was quiet for a moment. Then the silence was interrupted by Splinter's loud snoring. Leo smiled to himself. I think it's about time to wrap things up, he thought. But he would wait patiently, holding on to this last moment for a little while longer. He turned back to Casey. So, what happened next? A few more days have passed. The present day being November 25th. Midnight? Today's the day. Leo sat there on the floor in his room, holding a pen in his left hand. A blank sheet of paper laid in front of him. He had been staring at it for a long time, trying to think of the right words to say. His final words. Leo took a deep breath and sighed, deciding not to wait any longer. His hand flowed, beginning to write. Dear Dad, I'm sorry. I know I've not always been the best son or brother, and I wasn't a better leader either. I've always been insecure about my role in the family and my team. But now I know. I don't belong here. You don't deserve me. But that's okay. I'll be taking my leave soon, and you won't ever have to deal with me again. There's no point in finding me or bringing me back again. I understand, but still, it's hard to say goodbye. Despite everything I've done, I still love you. I will always love you. I'll miss you. Leonardo, the letter read. Leo put down the pen, looking at his writing over and over again until he was content with it. He got up and placed the note gently down on his bed. Then he walked towards the door, looking over his shoulder to get one last good look at his room. It was a mess, just like him. Then Leo left his room for the last time. He walked over to Raf's room, being really quiet. Leo needed to grab his swords that Raf confiscated, but it was hard to get into his room when Donnie reinforced the doors to prevent another sleepwalker Raf problem. But Leo slowly and carefully lifted the metal shutters. Ninja stealth mode. It was dark in the room except for the singular, tattered paper lantern. Raf was sleeping soundly on his mattress spread across the floor. For the first time in a long while, he looked peaceful. He must finally be having a nice dream for once. Leo smiled softly before glancing around the room, and there they were, right next to the doors, and propped up against the wall. His katanas. Leo cautiously grabbed them, daring to not make a single sound. He looked over at Raf for a second. "Goodbye, Raf." Then he sheathed his weapons into the scabbards on the back of his sash, before quietly stepping out of the subway car and delicately lowering the shutters. Leo waited for a moment before letting out a relieved sigh. Then a small idea came to him. Perhaps he should check on everyone before he left. After all, these were his final hours. A thought scolded him to stop stalling, but Leo already made up his mind. He walked over to Mikey's subway car, noticing the doors were left open, but no lights were on except for Mikey's night light, so the youngest should be asleep. Leo peered into the room, as sure enough, Mikey was out like a light in his hammock. Leo noticed that his brother had a faint smile across his face as he slept. Leo smiled faintly back. "Goodbye, Mikey." Then he tiptoed away from the room, heading over to Donnie's. But Donnie wasn't in his room, which could only mean he was in his lab. Leo didn't want to risk if that meant Donnie was still awake, but he couldn't pass it up. So Leo carefully approached the lab, listening closely for the sound of electricity or keyboard typing. But instead, he was met with quiet snoring. Leo really didn't want to look inside, but he had to. Leo picked up his courage and took a glance inside. There, resting his head on the desk, Donnie was in a deep slumber. Sheldon was asleep, charging next to him. "Goodbye, Donnie." For a second, Leo wondered how many long nights Donnie would stay up once Leo had died. But Leo quickly shook off that thought, leaving the lab without looking at anything else in there. Last check-in on the list. Leo stopped by his dad's subway car next to the TV room. He slowly opened the shoji doors, peeking inside to see his dad sprawled across his bed and snoring obnoxiously as he always did. "Goodbye, Dad." And with that, Leo nodded to himself. It was time to stop dawdling. Leo carefully closed the doors, walking into the center of the TV room. He took out one of his swords, opening up a portal. Leo turned around, taking in the lair one last time. Then he turned back and jumped through. Leo landed on the rooftop of a building, not far from the lair's exit. He couldn't go too far anyway without triggering Donnie's locator alarm. The trackers Donnie put in everyone would give a notification if they went beyond a set perimeter. Leo had to get rid of it before going anywhere. But where would Donnie put it? Leo patted his arms, then his shoulders, then his thighs, and then his calves. There wasn't anything peculiar, or that stood out to him. Maybe it wasn't his shell. Leo rubbed the back of his neck, thinking. Then he felt it. Right behind his spine, on the hook of his skull, there was a tiny and subtle bump. It almost felt like a pimple. Maybe it was, but Leo couldn't take any chances. He looked down at the sword in his hand. He knew what he had to do. "So much for my streak." Leo's arm began to tremble as he slowly brought up the blade to his neck. He poked at the bump again, double-checking where it was. Then he pressed the blade against his skin and gritted his teeth. With a clean and quick slash, the sharp katana cut open his neck, gushing blood out everything. Leo gutted a scream in his throat, trying not to cry out. He reached his fingers in to see if he could find anything. The wound burned like hot fire. Then he felt something slip out and quietly clattered against the ground. There, in a dark red puddle, was a tiny purple disc with a blinking red light. Large blood drops continued to drip onto the roof as Leo gripped the back of his head tightly. "Man, this really fucking burns." But Leo was not done yet. He tucked his sword under his armpit and looked down at his gloves. He couldn't risk another hesitation like the first time. He couldn't risk someone calling him through the communication device. Leo yanked off both of his gloves with trembling hands, holding them close to his plastron. For a split second, Leo thought he could hear his brothers calling out to him, with smiles and laughter. Through heavy sobs, Leo let the gloves drop on the ground, the memories of his family's voices fading away along with it. Leo took a deep breath, wiping his tears. Then he noticed the bloodied bandages on his arms. "I guess I won't need these anymore," he thought. So Leo unraveled the bandages to reveal several white lines in different sizes, and at different angles. Leo was almost surprised to see that they were no longer red, But then he remembered that it's been about a month now since he last cut his arms. For a moment, a glimmer of optimism resonated within him, telling him that there was still hope. But that light soon wavered out as he remembered the plan. It's too late to go back now, Leo assured himself as he felt the blood continuing to trickle down his neck. Leo looked down at his sash, grabbing his phone from his side pouch. Of course, if no one could reach him from the communication device, they would obviously try to call his phone. So Leo had to discard it. He opened up his phone, taking one last look at all the photos his brothers and he took together, smiling, laughing, pranking each other. Now this was the last time Leo would ever see them again. Just a photo, a memory, like back in the prison dimension. Oh, how it was all coming full circle. Leo tried to smile at the photos before his face winced in grief and despair. He held his phone up in the air for a long moment. Then he chucked it against the concrete with all of his might. The phone screen shattered before it glitched out and then shut down forever. The weight of shame crushed him down as if the gravity suddenly increased, collapsing Leo to his knees. He didn't know why he was so scared. He had been planning this for a long time now. Why was he feeling this way? As Leo's body curled toward, he remembered the panic button tucked in his waist belt. Leo carefully snapped it off and placed it next to the bloody tracker, so that it wouldn't trigger the panic alarm. Now he was ready to go. Now it was time. Leo grabbed the sword from under his armpit and the other from its scabbard, placing both katanas in each hand that were now covered in a deep red liquid. Leo looked ahead at the horizon. Then he sprinted, parkering from rooftop to rooftop, on his way to his grave, to Metro Tower, the tallest building in the city. The place where Leo was left to die seemed like the perfect place to have his grand final bow at the end of his performance. Leo blocked everything out of his mind. He couldn't let his emotions get the better of him now, not when he was so close. He had his moment to feel, to connect to his brothers before saying goodbye. But that moment was over now. Close your heart, feel no pain. Though the tower was pretty far away from the lair, it didn't take long for Leo to reach it. Every now and then, he would open up a portal, jump through, and send himself flying towards Metro Tower. Before he knew it, Leo was standing at the foot of the building. Looking towards the top, the night sky was clear and bright with moonlight. Instead of a welcoming white and orange beam of light that Leo tried to reach so long ago, now it was a shiny blue hue. The stars were calling to him. Leo opened up a portal right underneath his feet, letting himself drop through and landing on top of Metro Tower's lower roof. Leo cautiously looked through the large slanted windows, remembering that fateful day where everyone found Raph in that room, stuck inside the Krong's incubator. Oh man, is this what the future looks like? Leo asked Casey as they looked around the crongified rooftop room. Nope, the future is worse. Much worse, Casey replied gravely. Leo shuddered at the memory. As he looked closer through the windows, Leo noticed that there was still a large hole in the floor from where the Krongified train emerged from. The lower parts have been repaired quickly, given they were essential for the public, and NYC's most efficient mode of transport, the subway stations. But it seems the upper areas were still destroyed. Leo looked up at the upper rooftop of the skyscraper, where the key once sat. Then up at the needle where the Krong key's mystic energy spouted from to rip open the sky. Leo violently shook his head, erasing the image. There's no point in dwelling on it now. I may have saved the world, but I caused this mess in the first place. But soon, I won't be able to cause anything again, Leo asserted with himself. He walked across the lower rooftop to a side where a tall ledge wrapped around it, almost as half his height, around 3 feet, probably. The wind quickly picked up speed, letting Leo's masked tails flow in the breeze. Leo took one last look at his swords as the reflective metal glistened in the shining full moonlight. Then he laid them across in front of him, holding them over the edge. His hands were shaking terribly. He had lost his swords before from this height, but luckily Casey found them. And even though Leo didn't need them anymore, it was tough to part with them. They were the only extension of Leo's mystic power. He was nothing without his swords, just like he was nothing without his brothers. Before Leo could say goodbye, his arms fumbled and dropped the katanas off the building. Leo panicked for a second, but then he counted, listening closely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A faint clatter echoed below. 9-ish seconds, more or less. 9-ish seconds and it'll all be over. Leo took a deep breath. Then he climbed up on the ledge. As soon as he saw the city down below, Leo couldn't hold back his fears any longer. All of a sudden, overwhelming dread took over as Leo bawled out in heavy sobs. The harsh cold wind blew like crazy, making his balance feel uneasy. The only warmth he felt was from the blood dripping from his neck and the hot gushing tears that were streaming out from his eyes. Thick, Salty snot leaked from his nostrils as Leo took rapid deep breaths from his throat that was hoarse and dry. This was it. One single step would shift the balance, tipping him over the edge. Leo took a moment to compose himself. This was it. Just one more step. Elio! Leo's shoulders tensed. For some reason, he could have sworn he heard all of his brothers shout his name in sync. But that was impossible, right? There was no way of contacting him. No one knew where he was. And even so, everyone was asleep. So how? Elio, don't move, okay? I'll come get you myself. Raph yelled from behind. No, 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 no. Not him. Not here. Not now. Please don't do this, Elio. Don't you dare jump. Are you bleeding? Eh? And what happened to your arms? Mikey screeched in a panic, his voice cracking. Mikey. No, he wasn't supposed to. I never wanted him to see this. This wasn't the plan. Leo, Donnie called out in a calm yet sharp voice. Get down. Leo blinked. Finally, everything made sense. Of course he would be able to find me. And despite all my best efforts, Leo shuddered, feeling dizzy from the panic, but did his best to keep both feet flat on the ledge. The wind wasn't helping as it danced with his decorated mast tails and hanging star piercings. From their voices, Leo guessed they were several feet away. As long as no one stepped forward, they shouldn't be able to reach him. Go away, Leo enunciated. His voice was gravelly and strained. Don't you dare come any closer. Got it? Leo didn't dare to look behind him. He knew that if he did, then the last time he saw his brothers would be with upset faces instead of happy ones. He couldn't stand to see them upset again. I can't. There was a long moment of silence. The whistling of the wind was all that could be heard. Leo legitimately wondered if his brothers actually obeyed his demand. He wouldn't be too surprised. So Leo looked over the edge. Talk to me, Leo, Mikey called out, voice peaking. Tell me what happened. What brought you here? Leo quivered a shallow breath, clenching his fists. His lips trembled as they opened, trying to find the words through his scattered and panicked mind. Leo cried, Oh, Mikey, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to know. Well, I do now, Mikey snapped. Then Leo heard him gasp, Mikey stopping himself. Jay, just sigh. Would you at least look at me? The youngest begged, straining his voice. Do it for Mikey. Leo slowly turned his head to the right, but didn't look over his shoulder. Instead he looked at the corner of his eye. I can't, he whimpered. There was more pause for a bit. Leo could hear Mikey hiccuping quiet sobs, trying to silence himself. Leo felt enraged by a wave of shame coming over him. Fucking asshole, look at what you've done. Leo, we're here for you, Raph shouted, his voice clear and empowering. Whatever you need, just say the word. What I need is for you to leave. Just leave me alone, Leo sobbed. No, I didn't mean, Raph sputtered up. Then he winced. Leo, just come home with us. We'll take care of your wounds, and you can rest easy. Doesn't that sound nice? Raph pleaded. It did sound nice. Leo then slowly turned his head to the left, looking as far as his peripheral would go without peering over his shoulder. We'll all go home, watch a movie, eat some pizza, and then gather all of the beanbags, pillows, and blankets, and make one big and cuddly turtle pile. Just like old times, Raph soothed in a friendly tone. All you gotta do is get down from there, Leo wheezed, trying not to whine out loud. His heart ached in agony. His lungs were fighting for their life to breathe. Leo tensed his muscles even more, shutting his eyes and shaking his head. Doing so caused his body to sway with the wind and made Leo panic as his feet rocked back and forth, and he flailed his arms around, trying not to fall forward or back. No, Donnie screeched. It sounded close, like right behind him. Leo's panicked curiosity got the better of him as he whipped his head around to see his twin right there next to him. Donnie was reaching out an arm as purple mystic sparks flickered around him. But then Donnie froze in place, startled that he had been caught. And Leo fucked up his plan right then and there as he glanced around at everyone's faces. Mikey was crying a river of tears, eyes widened, mouth covered with his hands. Raph was gritting his teeth as he cried as well, his body lurching forward and ready to run. Donnie's eyes watered, stone cold in fear as he didn't dare to move. They were upset. After spending all this time trying to keep them happy, they were upset. Leo subconsciously took a step back in disbelief, forgetting that there was nothing to step back on. Leo screamed in a panic. He wasn't ready. He didn't mean to. In the last split second, Leo saw his brothers charge after him. The sun began to fall from the sky, and the moon caught him. As the wind rushed all around him, Leo was dangling over the edge, by one arm as Donnie clutched both hands around his wrist, while Donnie was lying against the ledge on his plastron. Donnie's mystic powers activated, instinctively activating the hoverboard in his battle shell. Leo hesitantly looked at the ground below. The perspective was stretching further and further away. Leo screamed in hysterics. He couldn't seem to stop. "Keep your eyes on me, Leo. Keep your eyes on me," Donnie screeched, his eyes widening in terror. Leo snapped his head at his disaster twin, seeing Mikey and Raph run over and grab onto Donnie's arms as well. Together, the brothers hoisted Leo up and fell back on their shells, lying safely on the roof. Leo clinged onto Donnie's arms, curling himself up into a ball as he began wailing. "I'm sorry. I'm 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 sorry." He continued to cry. His brain was scattered, only able to repeat those two words like a broken loop. "It's okay. It's okay. We got you. It's okay." Raph hushed, wrapping his arms tightly around everyone. "Oh my gosh, Leo, I was so scared," Mikey whined as he hugged Leo, tucking his head down. "Period, Lee," Donnie muttered, not moving an inch. Raph carried Leo in his arms as the brothers descended down the tower's elevator, all the way to the bottom floor. Leo had refused to stop wailing, trembling immensely in Raph's embrace. The oldest tightened his grip towards his plastron as if to squeeze out all of Leo's pain, like a sponge. But his little brother couldn't seem to stop himself. Once they reached the ground, the turtles walked out of the elevator and headed for the turtle tank that was parked outside. They stepped in, Raph sitting in his chair, while still cradling Leo. The poor kid was hyperventilating as his arms wrapped around himself, continuing to cry out loud. Raph needed to calm him down. He smiled tenderly, gently clearing his throat.
"No tengas miedo. Yo estoy aquí." Raph sang softly. Slowly rocked back and forth. "Cierra los ojos y centrarse en mí. Cuando está oscuro, yo estoy aquí. Cuando es malo, yo estoy aquí. Cierra los ojos y centrarse en mí."
Raph knew his singing wasn't the best, but that never stopped him from soothing his little brothers in the past. Leo's cries had quieted down, though he was still whimpering. Yet Raph still continued to carefully rock him as Donnie started up the turtle tank, turning on the autopilot to take them home. Mikey was on his phone, typing something before he put it away. He then approached Raph and Leo. "April says that she and Casey are on their way over," Mikey explained. "Dad's not responding, but I know he's reading my texts." Mikey looked down at Leo, gingerly placing a hand on his shoulder. Leo flinched, breathing quicker for a moment before he calmed down again. Raph could see Mikey's gaze scan over Leo's neck and self-harm scars. Mikey's face scrunched bitterly before taking a deep breath. "You're going to be okay now, Leo. I promise," he whispered. Leo hiccuped another sob, tucking inwards. Mikey wrapped his arms around Leo's shoulders, gently petting Leo on the head. Raph tucked his head down towards them, pressing their foreheads together. Suddenly, Leo's breathing became more panicked. Raph yanked his head back, wondering what happened. Mikey took a step back as well. "Well, easy, Leo. What's going on?" Mikey asked in a quiet voice. Leo didn't respond. His breaths got raspier. He squirmed around, trying to push himself off of Raph. Raph tried his best not to panic and make things worse. He looked at Mikey, whose expression turned focused as he realized something. Mikey's brows furrowed and his eyes flickered from side to side, staring at Leo's face. "I know what's happening," Mikey mumbled quickly. "Well, what is it?" Raph asked, careful not to raise his voice. Mikey's eyes darted around Leo. He's been keeping these emotions in for so long that now that they're at this intensity, he doesn't know how to handle them, Mikey explained methodically. "In other words, he's having rapid panic attacks." Raph blinked in surprise. He knew that Mikey was emotionally intelligent, but he didn't think he'd be able to psychoanalyze Leo in an instant. Raph faintly gave a proud smile at his youngest brother. Then he refocused back to the red-eared slider. "What should we do then?" Raph questioned as he tried to hold on to Leo. Mikey didn't answer him and instead grabbed Leo's hand. He gently clasped it in both of his hands, giving Leo a warm smile. "Hey, Leo, I need you to take some deep breaths with me, all right? Deep breaths." Then Mikey emphasized as he took deep breaths, as well, in and out, in and out. Leo tried to follow along, but he failed to. His breathing quickened. Then Leo lurched forward, clasping his other hand against his mouth. He herked, ducking his head. "Ah shit," Mikey muttered under his breath. Then he spoke up. "Let him go, Raph." Raph hesitantly released his grip on Leo as Mikey hurried over to the side of the tank. Leo leapt down, collapsing to his knees on the floor. One hand pressed on his mouth, and the other tucked around his stomach. Mikey returned quickly with a bucket, dropping to the floor, and setting it down in front of Leo. Leo got on all fours, hovering his head over the bucket, and began retching. Leo coughed and gagged, trying to breathe before vomiting again. Raph could hear Donnie gag as well, glancing over in time to see him turn away from them and wrap both arms around his stomach. Leo's masked tail slowly draped over his shoulder as he continued to throw up. Raph sighed and pulled them back as Mikey gently rubbed Leo's shell. Then Raph decided to untie Leo's mask since they would have to remove it anyway to patch up his neck. The parts of the fabric that touched the back as well as the tail ends were stained in blood, the front being covered in smudged eyeliner. The turtle tank carefully rolled to a stop as the brothers finally returned home into the garage. The back door dropped to reveal April and Casey waiting for them. They both gasped as they looked down at Leo, who was still puking, his arms and legs quaking now. Then Leo sputtered, flopping backwards on his legs. He started to slowly lean back before Raph caught him and held him again. Mikey scooted over with a tissue box, using the tissues to wipe Leo's mouth before discarding them in the bucket. "Oh, Leo, you poor thing," April sighed sympathetically. Her eyes started to dwell up with tears as she walked over and knelt down beside Leo. "You're gonna be all right, baby brother. Sis is here." Raph glanced over at Casey in the back, whose face was stunned yet cold, like he was desensitized by fear. Raph felt like someone punched him in the gut, thinking that Casey had most likely seen this before. Even though the future was different now, some things may have stayed the same. Raph looked back down at Leo in his arms, who was now slowly blinking his eyes. "He must be exhausted. We probably only got a few more minutes until he has another attack," Mikey stated, standing up. He looked over his shoulder at Donnie. "D, if you can, we gotta take care of his wounds now." Raph stood up slowly, carrying his little brother. He turned to face Donnie, who stared down at the floor, still faced away from everyone. Then Donnie's head moved up, and he nodded, turning on his heels, and quickly speed walking ahead of the group to the medbay. Everyone else followed, surrounding Raph and Leo. When they got to the subway car, Raph carefully set Leo down on the gurney, placing him on his side, as Donnie went to grab the medkit from the corner. Donnie ushered and signed for everyone to wait outside. Before Raph could take a step back, Leo gripped Raph's glove. "Don't go," he muttered weakly. Raph smiled reassuringly, holding Leo's hand. "I'm not going anywhere. I won't leave you," the alligator snapping turtle spoke softly. Donnie returned with the medkit and a syringe. He didn't say anything. He hadn't said a word since the turtles got down from Metro Tower. Aftermath jitters, Raph thought. He stepped to the side, still holding Leo's hand as he let Donnie get to work. The second oldest took Leo's arm and injected the syringe inside. It was probably painkillers. Raph was not sure. Medical knowledge wasn't his strong suit. He knew the least out of everyone. But Raph knew enough about first aid at least, and especially how to tell when there's something wrong. Leo's eyes drooped, yet he tried to keep them open. Why was he resisting? It was like Leo refused to let others help him. Why? Raph couldn't understand, so he held Leo's hand just a little tighter. Donnie walked around behind Leo to stitch up his neck. Leo slowly took a breath. "You better not put any more trackers in me, Don," Leo mumbled. Donnie didn't respond. Leo turned to look over his shoulder at his disaster twin. "Donnie." Donnie grabbed Leo's head, pushing it back over. With his other hand, Donnie was holding something. It was a small purple disc with a blinking red light. Raph remembered seeing it on a nearby rooftop when looking for Leo, though he didn't know what it was. Raph recalled what happened just about an hour ago. Splinter woke up everyone and said that Leo was in trouble. He said that he found a note but refused to let anyone else see it. But Donnie took Raph and Mikey in the turtle tank to go look for him. That's when they found this disc, next to Leo's gloves, phone, and panic button, and surrounded in blood. Raph squeezed his eyes shut as he remembered how scared he was. He had finally gotten a good night's sleep for once, finally being able to tell the one with many names that he was not afraid of it, only to be woken up by the sound of screaming. Donnie slipped the disc inside Leo's wound. Raph's eyes widened in shock. Was that the tracker? Did Leo gash his own neck to get rid of it? And now Donnie was putting it back in. Leo didn't seem to notice, probably because he felt numb, but still, this was crazy. The things that Donnie was willing to go above and beyond for to ensure his family's safety. Even if it seemed unethical, Raph remembered the secret Donnie came clean about. Raph disapproved of it. All of it. Donnie cleaned up Leo's neck and stitched it back up. Then he sighed, taking a step back. Donnie didn't look at Raph but still faced towards his brother as he held up his hands. "All done," Donnie signed. "He needs rest. And water." Raph nodded. "Thanks, Donnie. You've been a big help today," he smiled. Then he took a closer look at his immediate younger brother's tired face. "Period. Are you doing all right? You seem kinda off." "I'm fine," Donnie signed, brows furrowed. Then he walked over to the doors, opening them, and waving at the others to come in. Everyone huddled around Leo with panicked and worried faces. Leo's eyes opened for a moment, glancing around in front of him. Then he whimpered, curling up, and closing his eyes again. Raph could see Donnie step into the background, but Raph didn't push it. He probably needed some time alone. I never would have thought I'd see him back in here so soon, April lamented. Sweet baby brother, I should have anticipated something, Casey grumbled. I've known Master Leonardo at his worst. I didn't think, oh, who am I kidding? We need to do something, Mikey chimed in, determined. I'm not gonna let this happen again. There was a pause for a moment as everyone stared at Leo. Raph could tell that Leo was uncomfortable with the group watching him. He curled up more and began crying softly. Raph squeezed Leo's hand to comfort him. Then the small patter of footsteps slowly crept into the room. Leonardo, Splinter's rough voice cut through the silence. Everyone turned to look at him. Splinter gripped the note in one hand, staring at Leo with this expression that Raph wasn't used to. It was a mix of fear, confusion, and sorrow. Raph would never admit it, but he hated that face. That was the face of a man who actually decided to give a shit about his sons. Raph knew Splinter was facing personal issues as the turtles were growing up, but it caused Raph to grow up faster and be Splinter's replacement. Splinter approached the gurney before climbing up and sitting on the edge, hanging his legs over the bed. Leo opened his eyes and immediately sat up, facing his dad with a panicked look. Careful now, my son. You are not in any trouble, Splinter soothed. He pressed his lips together, taking a breath. I just want to say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Leonardo. You should have never have felt like you were worthless. I'm your father. It was my responsibility to show you your worth. But I have failed you. And for that, I am so sorry. Dad, Leo's voice croaked. It's going to be all right now. I'm here. Leonardo, Splinter reassured, scooting closer. Leo immediately hugged his dad. Splinter hugged him back as Leo began to sob. Everyone watched as the two held each other for a long while. Splinter rubbed the back of Leo's shell. My boy, my brave boy. Splinter quivered with tears in his eyes. After a few minutes, Leo's crying calmed down as he fell asleep. Donnie checked in on him once more before the group left the room to let Leo rest. There was something important that needed to be discussed. Mikey looked over his shoulder at the medbay. The doors were left wide open so that everyone could still monitor Leo from outside the subway car. But it still didn't help Mikey feel any less anxious. Everyone gathered around in a circle, exchanging awkward glances. Mikey knew what needed to be done, and everyone knew it too. So, who's gonna say it? April started in an annoyed tone. Say what? Raph asked, confused. That he needs help. We need to help him, Mikey exclaimed. Donnie nodded solemnly. But how? No one here knows what to do, Casey chimed in. I do, Mikey pointed out. I'm Dr. Feelings. It's my job to keep everyone and their heads together. Everyone paused for a moment, glancing at him. They all shared the same look, awkward wide-eyed stares. Mikey knew it all too well. They're babying me again, period, Mikey. I'm just not sure if it's enough. This is something that requires a professional, Raph explained hesitantly. Donnie fluttered a hand in front of him, signing a draw of attention. With what money? Donnie signed, brows furrowed. This isn't something that we can steal from a store. Our money is already stretched for your treatment and Mikey's. Then cut mine, Mikey intervened. My arms aren't as urgent as Leo's case. He almost fucking died. Nope, no way. Nuha, April disagreed. I'm calling it now. No more sacrifices are gonna be made. We can't just do that, Mikey. Perhaps there is help in the hidden city, Splinter intervened. I knew a few people in this situation during my time in the Battle Nexus. Maybe there's someone who can help. I can ask around. See, that's a good start, Raph smiled. But then he raised a brow. But that's gonna take a while, right? We need a plan for the meantime. Donnie signaled his contribution to the conversation again. Personally, I'm uncomfortable with leaving Leo alone. Someone needs to stay watch, Donnie signed. I'll do it, Mikey eagerly volunteered. We'll take turns, Donnie signed, raising his marker eyebrows to emphasize. Then I'll go first, Mikey stated. All right. Simmer down, you two, Raph interrupted. Then he sighed. Okay, here's the plan then. Dad goes to look for help. In the meantime, we'll all take turns throughout the next, however many days, watching over Leo, Raph explained deliberately. Mikey, you can go take first watch but keep Leo in the medbay. Everyone else, we gotta Leo-proof the lair so that there's no way that he can hurt himself. We're on it, Raph. Casey smiled and nodded. Everyone exchanged determined glances, now feeling better about what they needed to do. The group split off, going their separate ways throughout the lair. Mikey turned around to head for the med bay until Raph stopped him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hey, Raph whispered. I get that you want to be extra helpful, being our awesome peacemaker, and all, but don't feel like you have to prove yourself. We trust you, King. You know. Mikey turned his head to look at Raph. Trust, right? Though you still treat me like a baby. Mikey shrugged Raph's hand off. I got it, he insisted. Then Dr. Feelings walked back into the medbay. Leo woke up with regret, rubbing his eyes blearily. He felt numb and foggy. It didn't take long for him to realize that he was in the medbay. A fluffy, navy blue, and gray star-patterned fleece blanket was draped over him. Leo tugged the blanket, curling up into a ball even more. In front of him, Mikey was sitting on a metal stool while going through his phone. I should be dead by now, but of course I had to fuck everything up again. After spending so long to make this work, how much longer am I supposed to wait? Leo shuddered, rasping a breath as he tucked his head down. He just woke up, and he's already filled with sorrow. It hurt to cry. His throat was dry and scratchy from screaming and vomiting. His head ached from fear. His heart was sore with grief and shame. I hate this. I hate myself. Why can't I just fucking die? Leo, what's wrong? Mikey asked calmly with a sympathetic look. Leo looked up at him to notice that he was standing beside the gurney now. Are you in pain? Leo wanted to say no and flash a smile, but Donnie was right back then in the snow. Masking was exhausting. Leo didn't have it in him anymore to keep up this pathetic play of pretend. This show was over. He shut his eyes tightly, tucking his head back down. Period. How about some water? Donnie said that you'll need it when you wake up, Mikey suggested. His voice carried to the other side of the room as Mikey walked off. Then Leo heard his footsteps return. Here, let's give it a try. Leo opened his eyes again to see Mikey holding a cup in front of him. Leo sighed. I don't deserve it, he muttered. Leo was a bit surprised by the fact that he verbalized the thought. But who was he to care anymore? Mikey's shoulders tensed for a moment. You don't need to earn it, Mikey said sternly. You need it to survive. There's no point in proving that you deserve it. Mikey sat on the edge of the gurney and faced towards Leo. The red-eared slider slowly sat up, hugging his legs over the blanket. He stared at the water like it was offending him. Mikey smiled patiently. Just one sip, okay, he whispered. Leo grumbled under his breath, reluctantly reaching for the water. He held the rim of the cup to his lips and flinched, then gathered his courage and tried again, slowly tilting the cup bit by bit until the water seeped into his mouth. On one hand, Leo felt weak and ashamed. He wanted to throw the cup across the room and refuse anything and everything that Mikey would try to offer him until he rotted away. But on the other hand, it felt nice. It felt rewarding to grant his body the water that it so desperately needed to keep going. Leo ended up taking 2 sips. He handed the cup back to Mikey and hugged his knees again, resting his head on his scarred arms. Mikey smiled brightly. All Leo did was drink water, but it made Mikey incredibly happy. If this was all it took to make someone smile, Leo wondered why he even put up all that effort in the first place. Mikey placed the cup down on the floor and scooted closer to Leo, reaching to place a hand on his elbow. Leo, I want you to talk to me, Mikey said, his expression fixated on Leo. I feel like I wasn't paying enough attention to you because I had no idea you were going through this. I'm so sorry, Leo. I've been so self-absorbed in my own story that I didn't recognize what was going on. Mikey's eyes started to water. No, Leo cut his little brother off and quickly shifted his legs to the side. No, it's not your fault. I was the one hiding from you this whole time, he explained. Listen, Mikey, no one is hiding from you because you are the youngest. No one is trying to treat you like a baby. It's because you are smart. You are so smart. If I told you anything, you would read me like a book. Leo paused for a moment, looking down. He hesitated. If you knew everything, I wouldn't have. Leo let out a shaky breath. I wouldn't have done it. Then let me know now, Mikey insisted, his brows upturning his mask. Tell me everything. Leo glanced at him. Everything? How the fuck am I supposed to do that? Where do I even start? Leo's eyes drifted around the med-bay subway car as he tried to think of something to say, but his throat felt like it was being tightened, getting more difficult to swallow gulps of air. He didn't want to think about it, about his fears, his feelings, the past few months since the crime. He didn't want to feel anything. Leo's nerves were getting jittery, anxious for some relief, a drink, but Leo couldn't do that anymore, not now. He tucked his head down, his mind locking up. I can't, he muttered. There was a pause for a moment. Then Mikey placed his hand on Leo's. Leo looked up at him. I think I have an idea, Mikey smiled. What if we mind meld? Leo practically forgot that was a thing they could do. It's been like 3 years. It felt like so long ago. Mind melding would be the easiest way for Leo to tell Mikey what's going on. But then he was faced with another problem. The turtle stopped mind melding a long time ago, for no one wanted their personal minds to be invaded, growing distant, and keeping secrets. Mikey, I'm not sure. Leo stuttered hesitantly. What if you get hurt? I don't want you to push it if you can't handle it, because I can't even handle it either. Mikey leaned closer with a determined grin. Try me, he taunted. Leo huffed a sigh. He shrugged. All right, here goes nothing. Leo leaned forward, touching foreheads with Mikey. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Just focus. Leo felt it in his soul. A connection he shared with all of his brothers. A line like a river splitting into streams. Everything and nothing at the same time. He searched the dark for his brother. An orange light. Suddenly there was this ping, and then Leo could see and hear with Mikey's eyes and tympanus. He could feel what Mikey felt. For the first time in literal months, Leo felt happy. Like actually happy. Though the situation was bleak, he could feel Mikey's overwhelming positivity taking over. Leo huffed out a nervous laughter. A smile of relief. Sniff. Period, Mikey. Heek. Leo suddenly snapped his mind out of the synchronization. He pushed back, blinking and rubbing his eyes repeatedly. He looked up to see Mikey curling himself inwards, heaving out heavy sobs. That's right, if Leo could hear and feel Mikey's thoughts and emotions in the mind meld, then Mikey could hear and feel Leo's thoughts and emotions as well. Leo felt a chill go down his carapace. He leaned forwards, hovering his hands around his brother. Mikey, are you okay? Damn it, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. How come you're not crying right now? Mikey snapped in a croaked voice. Leo's expression relaxed as tears immediately filled his eyes. He began to shake his head in disbelief before Mikey quickly pulled him into a hug. Leo gingerly hugged back before crying along with his brother. The portal duo held onto each other for a long time. A while later, Leo was allowed to leave the medbay. Though he only went to his room and slept for hours, Mikey stayed with him the whole time. Apparently, Leo was under supervision at all times. The kitchen, especially its knives, was off limits, and he wasn't allowed a moment alone. Not unless he had to use the bathroom, which then meant that Mikey would follow only 2 steps behind, and then wait outside. So Leo grew tired of conversation, sleeping in his room in his pajamas, with the star fleece blanket wrapped around him. At one point, Raph switched turns with Mikey, and gently shook Leo awake. Hey, bud, Raph whispered, and smiled a toothy grin. You hungry? I got some hot soup here for you. Raph was holding a blue ceramic bowl, filled with teriyaki chicken noodle soup. Leo's favorite, but for some reason, the wonderful aroma made Leo feel strangely nauseous as he lost his appetite a long time ago. You don't need to earn it, Mikey said sternly. You need it to survive. There's no point in proving that you deserve it. Leo softly sighed under his breath. He slowly sat up in his bed, draping the blanket over himself. He crossed his legs and faced towards Raph, not bothering to put on a fake smile. Raph handed him the bowl and a pair of black wooden chopsticks. Leo stirred the noodles around, staring into the bowl. His stomach was once again begging for food, though Leo's mind kept trying to convince him that he wasn't hungry. Raph flashed a sympathetic look. Hey, want to know something interesting I saw online the other day? Raph asked in a friendly tone. Leo looked at him and raised a brow. Apparently, 90% of your body's serotonin is stored in the stomach. Only 10% of it is in your brain, which is why people get hangry, and it's also why their moods improve when they eat. Side note from the author. This sort of mindset can also trigger binge eating disorder, so take this info with a grain of salt and stay safe. 3. Leo's brows furrowed, his lips pursing up and twinging at the corner, giving Raph this look that says, bullshit. It's true. You can look it up yourself once Donnie fixes your phone, Raph claimed. So give it a shot. Take a bite, that's it. Leo picked at a piece of the noodles with his chopsticks. Just one bite. He hunched down, holding up the piece to his face. It smelled amazing, yet the back of his mind screamed at him to not do it. Leo parted his lips to take a bite before his hands started shaking and fumbled with the chopsticks. The noodles fell back in the bowl with a tiny splash. Leo couldn't force himself to it. His breath quivered. Raph reached for the bowl. Not hungry, got it. That's okay, Raph reassured as he set the bowl down on the ground. We can always try again later, all right. There's no rush. Leo felt himself relax at Raph's words, wiping away a tear that formed. Raph sighed sympathetically and scooted closer, wrapping his arm around Leo. Leo leaned into the side hug, tugging at the blanket. He closed his eyes, feeling at ease. Despite everything the A-team have gone through together, Leo trusted Raph the most. You know I love you, right? Raph asked in a hushed voice. I know, Leo replied absent-mindedly. You know I'd go above and beyond for you, right? I know. And you would do the same, right? IKN. Leo opened his eyes and paused. Then he slowly looked up at Raph to see him smile warmly. Leo sighed and smiled back. I would. Donnie stopped by later that day and switched places with Raph. Raph took the bowl with him, telling Leo that when he feels like it, he could try again. Donnie gave Leo's phone back, good as new, as well as a pair of headphones. Finally, some sort of escape from this mess. Leo plugged the headphones into his phone and listened to some music, letting it blast his tympanus as Leo tuned out the world. "I'm sorry," Donnie signed. That's when Leo finally acknowledged that he caused Donnie to shut down once again because of the whole fiasco earlier. Leo frowned. "Why?" Leo signed back. Everyone in their family knew sign language pretty well to help Donnie, but out of everyone, Leo was the only one who would use it with him. It was another small thing that kept the sun and moon close. "I knew everything, but I didn't know you'd kill yourself," Donnie signed with a worried expression. "I didn't want you to know." "Don't be sorry," Leo signed, frowning sympathetically. "I'm so sorry, fair. I understand." The conversation ended there. Donnie walked over and sat down on the bed next to Leo. The disaster twins lounged against the wall as Leo decided to unplug his headphones and blast the music to share between them. A couple songs later, Leo heard an unfamiliar tune. He looked down to see it was a Billie Eilish song. A calm guitar was strumming. "I didn't add that there." He turned to look at Donnie, who raised a brow and put on a smug smile. Did you edit the playlist?" Leo asked, unsure. Donnie shrugged, still smiling, and then looking down at the phone. As the song continued to play, Leo wondered why Donnie put it there. Songs have their own language in a way, and with Donnie not being the best at communication, perhaps he was trying to tell Leo something that Donnie himself couldn't put into words, verbal or not. Then the vocals began. "Sometimes you look the same, just like you did before the accident." Leo's eyes widened in surprise as the song continued. Then his expression softened as he turned to look at Donnie. Donnie looked up as well, staring for a moment before his brows upturned, and he smiled softly. Leo turned back to his phone, listening closely. It almost felt like Donnie himself was talking to Leo, yet neither one of them said a word. They just listened, just like they used to. "I know you don't remember calling me, but I told you even then, you looked so pretty. In a hospital bed, I remember you said you were scared. And so was I." Donnie held Leo's hand, squeezing it gently. Leo didn't react. His mind was going somewhere else with the music. Back to the day of the crawl when Donnie and he were stuck in the med bay together. Back to when Leo attempted the first time, but was interrupted by Mikey saying that Donnie was looking for him. Then getting tackle hugged because it was Donnie's idea. Then back to the second attempt where Donnie followed him afterwards. And then when Leo followed Donnie to that place. Then there was the third attempt. And now Donnie was here. Donnie was always there at every turn. The song took a turn as Leo's mind wandered, picking up tension. What if it happened to you on a different day? On a bridge where there wasn't a rail in the way, or a neighborhood street where the little kids play, or the Angeles crest in the snow or the rain? What if you weren't alone, there were kids in the car? What if you were remote? No one knows where you are. If you changed anything, would you not have survived? You're alive, you're alive, you're alive. Leo took a deep breath as the song calmed down. He found himself grounded back in his room. Donnie tightened his grip on Leo's hand. The red-eared slider turned to look at the soft shell. Leo's eyes began to water as he scooted closer, resting his head on Donnie's shoulder. Donnie rested his head on top. "You were scared, and so am I." The next few days that week went by slowly, though Leo slept through most of it. His appetite had improved as the days progressed, though sometimes Leo still struggled until he eventually gave up, and then tried again later. People were switching turns in a pattern. Mikey, then Raph, then Donnie, then back to Mikey, and the cycle continued. Mikey showed Leo some substitutes to his urges, like drawing on his arms with markers and rubbing ice against his skin. Raph made sure Leo was eating well. Donnie and Leo would exchange very few words, letting the music talk for the both of them. Sometimes, April and Casey would visit him. Occasionally, Splinter would check in as well. Until one day, Splinter came up to Leo with some important news. It's now been over 5 months since the Mad Dogs saved the world from the crawl. The present day being January 16th. Leo had been admitted into therapy with a colleague of Dr. Azaker. Dr. Azaker had said that given the situation, Leo's sessions were conveniently fully insured. Leo didn't know how Exy managed to pull it. Leo had been seeing this therapist for a while now. Today, he had another weekly appointment, and so Donnie went with him. Neither of them were wearing their gothic makeup or mask piercings anymore. That phase was over. Though they still kept the hanging stars and moon, Donnie waited in the waiting area for him as usual while Leo went in. Progress was slow but manageable. Things weren't at peace yet, but the therapist reassured him that it wouldn't be like that for a long time. It would feel like Leo hadn't made any progress, but that he will soon recognize it with time. He did recognize a few things though. For once, Leo could see a future. Donnie sat in the waiting room, going through his phone. He wondered what Leo could be talking about. About their broken family. About what Donnie had done. Donnie suppressed a grimace expression. Donnie clicked on his gas mask before entering the room. He scanned over the glowing light blue vials, just waiting to be used to their full worth. This is what you get for messing with my family, Donnie mumbled. Then he laughed, maniacally. He embraced the hysterics because for once, Donnie finally felt control again. Oh, I'm going to enjoy every moment of this. Donnie let himself get lost in the madness. Donnie shook away that memory and let out an irritated sigh. No matter how hard Donnie had tried to make up for it, no one seemed to let it go. This solution only caused him more problems. I need to fix this. Notes. TW, suicidal thoughts. Suicide attempt, it is very intense. Mentioned alcoholism, self-harm, emetophobia, medical setting, eating disorder, ARFID. For the final time, stay safe, smiley face, findowelpine.com. That's it for Leo's story. Tune in for part 4 in the spring. As always, here is some concept art to indulge in. As a bonus, I made a Spotify playlist just like the one Leo made in this story. Follow me on TikTok on @AzukerSkull. I post more content related to this fanfic as well as other TMNT stuff. You can find updates on the next part there too. Series this work belongs to. Previous work part 3 of my life, their story next work.